On the Road with Kelly and Bob is brought to you by Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings. Made in America, made to last. Coming up on this episode.
I wasn't like wanting to hurt someone. I just wanted to kind of make me a couple dollars.
Hi, we're Kelly
and Bob Phillips, and we're on the perpetual road trip of America's back roads,
where the journey is always the destination.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. I'm Bob Phillips.
And I'm Kelly Phillips. If you've followed us in our storytelling careers, you know we concentrate on good news. No controversy, no politics, no negativity, at least not for the sake of negativity.
That's right, but some stories we tell do have, well, let's say, a darker side that's necessary in order to get to the light. That's the case with this story we want to tell you about a guy in Monroe, Louisiana. He's another example of a good person doing something good to make our world a better place. But his story, well, it wasn't always like that.
I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I had 5 siblings. Grew up low class. After my mom and my dad divorced, things got kind of hectic a little bit financially. However, mom was a hard worker. Over the course of my adolescence, still yearning for that male mentor, and I found myself being attracted to males, but they were involved in the wrong thing. And that's where I found my life spiraling to biggest of bad decisions into a life current.
Sammie Crawford admits it. He wasn't a good guy when he was young. He wanted things and didn't care how he went about getting them. He made excuses for his behavior. And he fell in with the wrong crowd.
If you don't have someone who can counter that negative influence when you go home, then you can easily find yourself spiraling out into a circle of the cycle of what they're doing. And that's why I found myself new her, because my father had moved to Houston, Texas when I was very young. He was still very heavily involved in my life, but occasional visits and stuff like that, it wasn't enough to where it could pull me from the grips of that lifestyle that I find myself following.
So was your father a positive influence?
Very positive influence. However, he moved. And then once I started getting arrested, he was aware of it, and then he offered bring me to Houston with it, but I didn't want to go.
All your influences were in Shreveport, even though they were bad.
Yeah, well, what the thing about it is, I know my dad is going to be a disciplinarian. Because, my dad was in the military, career business owner, he was, I know that type of lifestyle was going to stop. And I had got to the age where I felt like I didn't want that to change. And I still look back at, that was a pivotal moment in my life, because if I would have chose to go to Houston with him at that age, I probably wouldn't have went down the alley that I went. And then I found myself arrested at the age of 17, and I ended up being incarcerated.
At 17?
Got arrested at 17 and got sentenced to 30 years of prison. I ended up there 22 years of prison.
So we find ourselves talking to a felon, a guy who spent 22 years in prison, and not for something Sammie Crawford claims he did not do. He was guilty and says he deserved to be incarcerated.
But wait a minute. Our stories are positive. Where's the happy ending? There has to be a happy ending, right? Sammie?
So 22 years in prison, any positive mentors in prison?
Oh, most definitely, because you got to understand that, once you're incarcerated, you find yourself in that box, and you can either do one or two things. You can continue to go down the alley in prison, or you can start taking advantage of the rehabilitation programs in there.
Those who have never been incarcerated, our collective vision of of prison is, well, it's just a bunch of bad guys in there. They're always going to be bad, and they're just fighting to stay alive.
Yeah.
You know, is it not like that?
No, it's not like that.
Was it somebody in particular that helped change you, or it was just something within yourself?
It was something within myself because I saw a reflection of me. We could see the new arrivals come, and they coming out to walk, and they had a little bag of whatever position they have. And I saw a guy that looked at something similar to me. And I was like, man, if only he knew. Very young guy was looking down, was sagging, with his pants down. And I tell people all the time, I was like, I remember that day. And I was like, I got to get myself. That's why I started boxing at.
In prison.
That's what really helped change me. That's what really got that aggressiveness out of me.
Convicted felon Sammie Crawford was serving a 30-year prison term for some bad stuff he did as a kid. He was getting along to get along, but, well, not much was changing for him until
He started boxing. It's funny how, sometimes in life, just what you need comes along just when you need it. And this was just what Sammie needed. Not a moment too soon.
While boxing in prison, I was introduced to boxing by an old guy who used to box. And he was like, man, you fighting every day. Why don't you just go box? And once I started boxing, I started to dig more often to the lifestyle. I started reading more, and I started reading about the discipline of heavyweights and champions and stuff like that. And I started to apply them into my life while I was incarcerated. And it kind of helped it a lot. You know, it helped me where I wasn't so hot.
You got out your aggression in the boxing.
Got on my breast in the boxing. And that's why I started to see, well, it started to introduce so much other things that accompany me right now today.
Like what?
So I had a pen pal where I was writing from New York. And he sent me a newspaper article back in 2006. The newspaper article was in the New York Times. Said ex-felons making six-figure salaries doing personal training. So he was like, hey man, you know, what you gonna do when you get out?
today, Sammie Crawford owns a personal training gym with a boxing ring in the middle of the room. But it's not for him. It's for young people that, well, they might be going down the wrong path, people who need structure in their lives.
He opened this gym and built that ring to change lives.
So boxing is a sport that could change a lot of people's lives. That has changed a lot of people's lives. It could change people's lives through just the career pursuit, but it also could change people's lives through the interaction of the trainers.
Do you have kids that come in here that you feel like you've changed their lives and stopped them going down that wrong path?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I have a lot of. If I catch a kid like 18, 19 years old, first thing I ask, try to tap off into what he like doing. Do you got a girlfriend? Do you got a car? What you like? And cause I know, we want to go shopping, we want to look good. And that's when I started to ask, do you got a job? Do you need some help? That's why I come in there.
How does it make you feel to know that you've gotten some kids off of that path that you yourself were on that got you in trouble?
Well, that's when I know God is real. Like, that's when I know when He's able to use me. Like, that's something, That's one of them wild moments. It's a pattern, it's a journey, it's directions. And within that directions, if we keep following the right direction, positive things are gonna happen. And the more people follow the right direction, the more people listen and get the right instruction, the more influence we could be on others.
Has this place, even in the smallest way, made a difference in people's lives here in Monroe, Louisiana?
Most definitely, I know for sure.
We got to talk for quite a while with Sammie Crawford. And it's different when you're having a conversation with someone who's experienced something that you have no frame of reference for, like being in prison. But it's also eye-opening. And I'm sure people who are listening are wondering, why was this guy in prison in the first place? What did he do? Well, for that answer, just keep listening.
Could I ask what you were arrested for?
Armed robbery, attempt murder, and carjacking. So me and a group of guys who robbed some people out of a car. That was the thing at that time, robbing people for ramps, and one worth more than, $4,000 or $5,000. I know spent 22 years behind that. We beat the people up. Very sorry for what happened. However, at that moment, we didn't think that of it. We just, and Bob not taking nobody for granted. It was like we didn't have no empathy for no one else.
Were you part of a gang or just part of a gang?
I was involved in the gang. We were just robbing people, robbing drug dealers, just making some bad decisions. And I can actually say for the first 11 years that I was incarcerated, if I would have been released, I probably would have been back in the streets, because that's my mind frame when I was in prison. I'm very young when I went. I was very immature. I thought I was a, grown man, but I was very immature. So when I got to prison, I just fell off into that same cycle of what I was doing before I went to prison. I just wasn't doing it on the level of being in society. I was still trying to smoke a little marijuana. I was still just kind of hanging out, still kind of fight. I wasn't really following all the prison moves. I was very intelligent, so I was taking advantage of some of the programs at prison, but I wasn't allowed to ever change the way my heart was. Because it is my heart. It is our heart what give us the desire to do what we want to do. You got wickedness in your heart, that's what you go be. So at that time, my heart wasn't right. It wasn't my mind, it was my heart.
What changed?
Christ.
Just like that?
Well, not just like that, because it was a transition moment. They had guys they had a Bible college at Antioch. And Bible college had guys that actually went to 4 years of Bible study and was getting bachelor's degrees. And most of these guys who was going to Bible study were kind of like a bachelor's in the prison. Some of them would go to Bible study just to pick up the education. But also they had other mentors too, because just because they made those bad decisions and went to prison, some of them was in prison for so long, they just changed. They just can't get out of prison. If a person commit a crime today, who says 15 years from now that person can't change? It don't take away what he did, but that person could change. And sometimes society don't look at that in that nature. However, the person does change. So prison does have people inside who change. And some of those people are assisting people that's incarcerated. The guards don't really change the individuals. They just kind of manage the prison that way and don't get out of line. But as far as the running of the prison and making sure that guys educate themselves, who's teaching in classes, those are other prisoners. Those are other inmates who assist instructors. So basically, inmates teaching inmates for them.
You believe that people can change their lives?
I believe Christ can change the life. People can do so much. We can only do so much because we selfish. We want us.
Were you scared to death when you arrived there?
Well, I went to different prisons, from city jail to parish jail. So yeah, I was scared, but each prison had their own intensity of prison violence.
Yeah, but Sammie, you were in Angola.
Yeah.
One of the most violent and hard prisons in our country.
Yeah. I was scared. I'm not gonna lie to you, when I went to Angola, I was at Cottonport, Louisiana, a boys correction center, and I was involved in a riot. It wasn't a violent riot, it was just a work stop at the riot. It was like hundreds of guys said, we're not going to work for a particular cause. And I ended up getting shipped in Angola because of that. A boys correction center wasn't a maximum security prison. So when you got guys that's doing stuff that weren't due to be on extended lockdown, they're shipped to a place that has extended lockdown.
Were you a tough guy then?
Well, boy, I thought I was tough.
Thought.
I thought I was tough, and I never got taken advantage of in prison. But it was a times where, some things happened that, I was like kind of, I was stabbed in prison. I got, yeah,
Stabbed?
yeah, right here. I stabbed right here. Some little scratches on my arm, and a couple fights. I wasn't like wanted to hurt someone. I just wanted to kind of make me a couple dollars, and because when you're young, you just want to make some money and help your family out, keep a little money in your pocket because, when you're less fortunate, the only thing you're thinking about is having a little something to eat, having a little something in your pocket where you can just get through the day. You got to understand, prior to every man coming to prison, we was at a state where whatever we had did, it wasn't a state what we was proud of. And even though I'm incarcerated, hey, I still want to, be happy. I still want to do something that can help someone. I didn't want to be in prison, upset, mad, just kind of the bad guy, just, wasn't able to contribute, to doing something positive, because I had did something wrong. I had, violated someone's privacy, and I also hurt someone. So I wanted to right or wrong, I just didn't know how to say it. I just had to do it in actions. And it was an opportunity where when I got out, I was working in a restaurant here. It wasn't no boxing program in Monroe. And they had a string of murders. There was a week of, I think maybe a couple of young guys had got killed. That's who got by. There was just a lot of shootings. And the mayor at that time had called a public safety meeting with the community, and they were asking for ideas to assist the community with programs or how can we quell the youth violence. And I was like, hey, look here, why don't we start a boxing program?
That was your idea.
That was my idea. But they was like, yeah, it sounds good, but there wasn't nothing that they wanted to invest in.
So how did you finally get to the point where you opened this?
Stepped out on faith. I had 2 sheets of paper. I said, you know what? I'm just going to start my own. Because I was already doing personal training. I had got my certification while incarcerated. I just started looking for me a builder. And I were looking at the city. Because I'm not from Monroe. I don't know no one from Monroe. I came here to a halfway house. So I'm originally from Shreveport. I get incarcerated. So when I, just imagine not going back to the city that you're from. So I stopped, get caught up in stays in Monroe for 6 months, then a halfway house. Then I had a choice to go back home or a choice to stay here. Because I had 3 jobs here, I just decided to stay here. And when that public safety meeting happened, I just decided to step out on faith, and I just started looking for me a builder.
Did you have somebody back you that believed in you?
Well, it was my church, White Fair Road. My church really supported me a little bit of everything. We hosted fundraisers, and I didn't have all this stuff in there. It was a shell of this.
Did you build this?
No, I bought this in Dallas. I drove out there and got it, but the floor, we built it.
How did you get the kids to come?
Well, because it's a new program in the city, most parents or students would like to attend, especially when they have low self-esteem or having some issues with bullying, or just kids that have a fascination with just boxing or just aggressive. Parents would love for them to be a part of something like this that could teach structured way how to handle their aggression. Because I'm the only boxing gym in the city. And because of my longevity here, because I opened this program in 2018, 85% of my clients are mostly women. They got kids in here that come in who mom and daddy can't tell them nothing. But they come in here and I'm like, hey man, what's wrong with you? Oh no, yes sir, no sir. It's just an instant level of respect and influence. But I don't take that lightly, because they could easily turn on me too as well. They're always watching. They're always looking for a hole in your armor to find your weakness too as well. So, it's a thin line between being able to help someone and find yourself, being a bad influence. So, but it's just that wild moment when I had an opportunity to, that's like, man, God using me.
Have you come up with an answer for why me?
There's no answer. It's only Christ working in me, teaching people how to love, how to forgive, how to repent, which is turn back. Though that's what He's doing, and teaching people how to have restraint, because He know we're not perfect. That's the best thing about it. He tell us we're not perfect, but He teaching us. Teaching is not you're gonna get it right all the time.
What do your parents think about you and what you've done?
I'm proud. So my dad, he passed away in COVID in 2020. So when COVID first hit, my dad passed away. He caught COVID, and like 7 days later, he passed away.
But you had started this.
I had already started. So when I started this, both of them came out to my grand opening, but they were super proud of me because I was so young. I got into a life of crime probably when I was 11 years old. And I went back and forth. I went to the youth programs to help with that. But when I ended up getting arrested at the age of 17 and did those 22 years, when I got out, they probably didn't know what to expect. Because my dad used to always say, hey, man, he used to always tell me about, like, what are you going to do? It was those little questions where I used to get tired of him asking me, you know what I'm saying? It was like, well, I'm not going out there to do nothing wrong. But he always used to just remind me that, you're going to have to change your light. You know what I'm saying? Because people don't know who you are. They just know who you are and before you win. You got to go out and show people that you're a different person. I have helped people overcome obesity-related diseases just through personal training. I have helped people overcome low self-esteem through some of the boxing training. But also I have helped young men and young women with obtaining employment. It's a lot. It's just I think the influence this place have made a difference in this city.
When you've got one of your kids' camps in here, and this place is full of kids that you have the opportunity to help, and camp's over at the end of the day and you lock the door and go home, what do you feel in your heart?
Oh, man, I love it, man. I just decided to run my girlfriend was like, man, why don't you run your own camp? And I was like, you know what? Why not? And I held it. And I was surprised, how many students came out, how many parents enrolled their students. But the biggest thing about the camp was at the end of the first day, one of the little kids came up and gave me a hug. I was like, oh, man. Be like, okay, coach. Gave me a hug. And just that moment right there, I was like, wow.
Melted your heart.
Yeah, it's one of the wild moments, Yep.
You're going to keep doing this, aren't you?
Yep.
And Sammie has truly created something special in Monroe, Louisiana. We want to thank you for joining us for this episode of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. And a big thank you to Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings, the folks who have kept us on the road for a long, long time, as well as to our friends and colleagues here at the Odyssey Network. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube. But first you need to download that free Odyssey app. That's audacy.com. You will be delighted at the world that opens up for you. Thanks for joining us again this week on the road with Kelly and Bob. New episodes drop every week.